may or may not have been hearing a lot of us saying that this is truly a break the glass moment. And there's been a lot to be alarmed about along the way since January of 2025, and heck, since first term Trump 1.0. There has been a lot that we have had to tolerate, that we've had to deal with, that we've had to digest, and none of it has been good. But when I tell you that we have reached the last circle of hell, that we are knocking on the door and Satan himself, convicted felon Donald Trump, has opened it and is ushering us in, I am not being hyperbolic. This weekend, some things went down that bode so badly for the future of America that it was not only worth talking about today with all of you, but it's worth talking about each and every damn day as far as I'm concerned. So, you all are probably familiar with it. If you're not, I'm going to get you caught up to speed because this is important. Let's get into the facts. There was a U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia by the name of Eric Sebert. And let's talk about Eric Sebert because it's worth refreshing people's recollection. And for those of you that don't know, it's an impressive, now former federal prosecutor. Why former? Well, he quit. He quit because he wasn't going to get pressured by convicted felon Donald Trump into bringing an indictment and prosecution against Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, even though Donald Trump was demanding that measure of loyalty from him. Sebert joined the U.S. Attorney's Office as a federal prosecutor back in 2010. I want you to think about that. The guy's been a part of the U.S. Attorney's Office since 2010 as an assistant U.S. attorney. And in January of 2025, Trump appointed him as the interim U.S. attorney in the EDVA. Trump handpicked him, Eric Sebert, to be the interim U.S. attorney. And unlike parking lot lawyer extraordinaire Alina Habba, when her 120 days were up, as you will recall, the federal judges in New Jersey said, hell to the no, we don't want you to continue as the U.S. attorney. Unlike her situation, in Sebert's case, at the end of his 120 days as the interim U.S. attorney, every single one of the federal judges in the Eastern District of Virginia said, absolutely, Mr. Sebert, we want you to continue as the U.S. attorney of the Eastern District of Virginia. The court unanimously approved and said that he should continue, and he has. Until last week. He quit. And you have to give people like Eric Sebert credit for not bending the knee. At a time when we see multi-cajillion dollar companies and conglomerates and huge law firms and politicians and business people, bending the knee and kissing Donald Trump's ass, you have to give people like Eric Sebert credit for saying, not on my watch. I won't be a part of this complicity. I won't be Vichy France for you. He said no. So what happens on Saturday, the Washington Post reports that Maggie Cleary is going to be taking over as the U.S. attorney for the EDVA. Now, Maggie Cleary has experience as a lawyer, but not enough to merit being a federal prosecutor, as in the U.S. attorney. She worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Virginia. In January of 2021, she worked there for just a year. That's it. Now, let's talk about the EDVA. The Eastern District of Virginia is known as the rocket docket jurisdiction. It is known if you are civil or criminal, your cases are going to move very, very quickly. The judges there do not play. So if you are a lawyer, you better be ready to bring your A game because the cases move fast and furious, and they are very demanding in the EDVA. So Maggie Cleary, maybe she would have done a great job, but you know what? We won't know. And the reason why we won't know is Donald Trump was dumb enough to open the curtains on Saturday and let us look into what we've already known was happening. Trump promised on his campaign trail as he ran to be president of the United States again, he promised a retribution presidency. And you know what? He's done it. Project 2025, in addition to that retribution presidency, has created a permission structure for violence, for hate, for institutionalized racism, for a war on, quote, woke, to become something official. But it's also created a permission structure for somebody like Donald Trump to be able to hijack the Department of Justice and to make it his own personal, weaponized federal agency to prosecute political enemies and opponents. And I want to underscore how absolutely terrifying that is. This is why we are at the 5-alarm fire moment, people. When the President of the United States can criminally prosecute political enemies and opponents simply because they disagree with him, because they ascribe to better morals and beliefs. Well, frankly, they ascribe to morals and beliefs because he doesn't do that. How can the President of the United States prosecute them? And it is a horrific thing to think that we have now devolved to a state in American society where democracy is not standing up to a president doing such things. So how do we know? And, again, I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional. I don't care. In fact, I'm just grateful that he did it because it's going to help Letitia James. And I'll explain why in just a minute. It's going to help other people, maybe even Adam Schiff and James Comey and others, should they be indicted and prosecuted. But on September 20th, 2025 at 6:44 p.m., Donald Trump posts on Truth Social to Pamela Joe, the Attorney General of the United States, that Comey, Adam, Shifty Schiff, and Letitia, they're all, quote, guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. He then defames Eric Sebert, calls him one of the worst, says that Sebert lied to the media when he said that he quit and that there was no case against Letitia James and James Comey, by the way. So then Trump lies, says that he fired Eric Sebert and that there is, here's another lie, that there's a great case and that many lawyers and legal pundits say that there's a great case against Tish James. He then promotes a woman by the name of Lindsay Halligan, that she's a really good lawyer and likes you, as in Pam, a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. Justice at the hands of a politicized and weaponized DOJ is what Donald Trump is calling for. Now, as I said, Maggie Cleary was announced to be the U.S. Attorney for the EDVA. So you can imagine a lot of us were like, well, what's happening here? Why Lindsay Halligan? Well, let's talk about Lindsay Halligan, people, because I'm coming from a place of knowledge. I'm down here in Florida, and Lindsay Halligan originated down here in Southern District of Florida. And Lindsay Halligan, I'm telling you right now, is not only incompetent, but inexperienced to be able to serve as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. She has no criminal experience. In fact, the only legal experience she had before she signed on to Trump Team Legal is that she was an insurance defense attorney. She defended insurance companies from property damage claims that were brought against insurance companies. And look, I am not maligning insurance defense attorneys, but I'm going to tell you right now, being an insurance defense attorney does not give you the requisite skill set to be able to be a U.S. attorney, to be able to handle cases as a prosecutor, and to be able to do it in a place like the Eastern District of Virginia. No effing way. I'm telling you right now, those federal judges, if Lindsay Halligan ends up being the EDVA U.S. attorney, they are not going to roll out the red carpet. There will be no welcoming red carpet for Lindsay Halligan in the EDVA. So then a little bit later, Donald Trump posts on Truth Social, he wants to, make Pam Bondi feel better because you just shat all over her. So he says she's doing a great job, but she needs a tough prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia. So his recommendation, Lindsay Halligan. So he's going to be nominating Lindsay to be the U.S. attorney. She is fair, smart, and will provide desperately needed justice for all. Again, that's a lie. Justice for whom? Justice only for Donald Trump. In a way, though, I have to be grateful if I'm a lawyer and if I'm defending somebody like Tish James and others, because this is fantastic evidence of selective prosecution. The President of the United States is weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies and opponents. And that in and of itself, on its face, is incredibly compelling evidence that any prosecution of a political opponent or enemy of Donald Trump is a selective prosecution that is being done. Let's get into the law, because the law is important as always. The United States Supreme Court in U.S. versus Armstrong has set out the following. In our criminal justice system, the government retains broad discretion as to whom to prosecute. However, prosecutorial discretion is not unfettered. It makes sense. It is an incredible amount of power to wield as a prosecutor. The idea that you can do it unfettered in a way where there is absolutely no holding back is a terrifying concept. In order to prove a selective prosecution claim, a criminal defendant must show discriminatory effect and discriminatory intent. Specifically, the defendant bears the burden to demonstrate that other similarly situated individuals have not been prosecuted and his or her prosecution was based on an impermissible motive. The standard for proving a selective prosecution claim is particularly demanding, requiring a criminal defendant to introduce clear evidence displacing the presumption that a prosecutor has acted lawfully, end quote. And that cites to a couple of other cases. I want to stop for a second and talk about the presumption of regularity. You've heard it a lot these past few weeks. It's been spoken about by some very smart legal minds. The presumption of regularity is what it sounds like. This idea that if an indictment is brought, that the processes, the procedures, the laws, the rules, that they were followed. That if a prosecutor brings an indictment, there's a presumption of regular processes being followed. But I am here to tell you that in this Trump administration, it should no longer be called the presumption of regularity. It should be called the presumption of irregularity. The presumption of regularity no longer exists. It is gone. It was gone the second Donald Trump did not put his hand on the Bible and swear on the Bible that he was going to uphold and defend the laws and the U.S. Constitution of this country. By the blatant weaponization of the Department of Justice at the hands of people like Pamela Jo Bondi, a disgusting cult loyalist of Donald Trump, we are seeing the total destruction of democracy. And again, it is not hyperbole. This is the 5-alarm fire, people. This is the break the glass moment. This is the thing that you should be scared shitless about. I bring you hope, I bring you optimism, I bring you solutions. In this instance, though, we must be worried. Because when criminal prosecutions of political opponents and enemies can happen, I am sorry to Jimmy Kimmel for losing your show. I'm sorry to Stephen Colbert for losing your show. I'm sorry for the millions of workers that are being damaged every day by Donald Trump. But criminal prosecutions that are done in a weaponized way are so incredibly destructive. It is an absolute example of when democracy has died. In selective prosecution cases, though, they are not defenses per se. Yes, you can move to dismiss, and you must move to dismiss if you're a criminal defendant on the basis of selective prosecution and other claims. But the United States Supreme Court has held that selective prosecution claims are not a defense to the merits of the criminal charge, but instead is an independent claim of prosecutorial misconduct. And discovery related to a selective prosecution allegation will be granted only if the defendants first demonstrate some evidence of discriminatory effect and discriminatory intent. So I want you to think about that for a second. This is why it's a huge hill to have to climb if you're a criminal defendant. Because it's the catch-22. I need the discovery to prove. I need the evidence to be able to prove that I am being selectively prosecuted. But it is a high burden for me to even get the discovery to get the evidence to prove that I'm being selectively prosecuted. But when you have Truth Social posts like we just saw, it's going to be a 1 + 1 = 2, is it not? It's going to be Donald Trump pressures Eric Sebert. Sebert's gone. Halligan is in. Halligan brings the indictment against Tish James. There you go, on a silver platter. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Tish James does have incredible lawyers like Abby Lowell and others that are fighting for her, but she's going to have to defend it in the first place. And that is where the wrong is so egregious. The fact that you must defend yourself against a politically motivated crime being brought against you, charges being brought against you, it not only detracts and distracts from the job that you must do, but in this instance, you're going to have to prove independently that it's a selective prosecution. Trump is a dumbass for putting that out there, but I am grateful. As a lawyer who respects the law, I'm grateful that he was stupid enough to put it out there. But it doesn't diminish his stupidity, his dumbassery. It doesn't diminish from the hard reality that someone like Trump, who has loyalists like Pam Bondi, Lindsay Halligan, Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, and others doing what he wants them to do, it poses an existential threat to all of us. So if you're a Republican, you should also give a shit that this is happening, because Donald Trump will not be in office forever. I don't give a shit what anybody says about this asshole having a third term. It's not going to happen. Come hell or high water, it's not going to happen. If you're a Republican, I would be scared shitless because when Democrats are back in office, I'd be terrified about what the hell's going to happen to you. Remember, presumption of regularity is gone. Who the hell says that the Democrats are going to bring back the presumption of regularity? Maybe they won't. I've been a big fan of punching the bully back in the nose. I've been a big fan of accountability, about holding people like Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, holding them accountable for what they have done, which is a total dereliction of their duties, a complete abandonment of what their oaths require. They should be held accountable for what they're doing. But until then, people, until then, we have to be vigilant. Until then, we must make our voices heard. We have seen grand jurors in DC and LA say, absolutely not. We're not returning true bills. We're not returning indictments because we know that these are bullshit arrests. We know that these are being done during a Trump administration that has allowed lawfulness to become a daily occurrence. Not lawfulness by American citizens, but lawfulness at the hands of federal agents that are mass, that are just completely wreaking havoc and doing a reign of terror on our American streets. This is a time for unadulterated language. Let's speak plainly, people. Trump has weaponized the Department of Justice. It's been happening. And now when he is handpicking U.S. attorneys because he wants them to bring charges against his political enemies and opponents, we are even in a darker time, people. We need to be heard. You must share this video. Let others know why this is so wrong, because this is not just a slippery slope. Again, we are at the door of hell. We are at the door of hell. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability, because it's the least that we should be doing now. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.